do see this sort of coming together, people trying to figure things out. They try to make sense of things, and sometimes they get it wrong. Certainly what we're seeing in this event, due to the long-term uncertainty and all the fact that the event just keeps going and going and going with COVID-19, is that there's just more opportunity for people to get things wrong and to spread misinformation, and now even disinformation has started to spread at a higher and higher level. So certainly, though what we're seeing is not unexpected from a researcher's point of view, it's a lot more volume and a lot more sort of what I would call internet toxicities are kind of manifesting in our information spaces right now.
What about misinformation and disinformation when it comes to the social unrest?
It's hard. I think we want to be really careful to be able to distinguish between, legitimate criticism of social inequities, police violence against African Americans, and understand that these are legitimate expressions of that are happening and they're manifesting as protests. At the same time, there are entities who are trying to exploit some of those protests and exploit some of that anger on both sides, both the protesters and the counter protesters, for political gain. And so we can see the intentional pushing of certain narratives and shaping narratives for folks that may not align with even the groups that they're trying to sort of spread their narratives within, but they may be trying to shape those movements towards some other set of political objectives. And some of those are foreign, but a lot of those are actually domestic political actors trying to use these to gain power.
Speaking of that, is there a difference in how misinformation is spread during, let's say, natural disasters versus man-made crises?
I would say yes. We've been studying a combination of different kinds of events. We've looked at earthquakes and hurricanes, and we've also looked at acts of terrorism, protest events, and even now sort of election crisis that we might be able to describe. And certainly I think with the man-made events where there's a human cause, there can be a lot more attempts to inject disinformation into the system, to kind of point the finger at one group or another, or to use the event for some kind of political gain.
How would you describe the scale of the problem right now?
It's so hard because the way we look at things right now is through social media, and social media is so distorted in terms of the kinds of conversations that are happening there, both maybe in our behaviors, but also there's intentional distortion going on there. There's all sorts of information operations, people trying to make things trend. And so it's hard to say, like, if we went out in the street and interviewed people, how big is the problem compared to if you look at social media? It looks huge. It looks like
it feels huge. It feels huge. It feels like, oh my gosh. I mean, yes.
Yeah.
I hope that you can tell me that that's not a reflection of who we are right now.
I don't think it's an accurate reflection of who we are right now. And I think that's an important thing to keep reminding ourselves. And even ourselves as individuals, when we go into these spaces, we're not our regular selves in these spaces. We're someone slightly different. There's more outrage, there's more anger, there's more snarkiness. The way we interact online is not the same as the way we interact in person. And that's part of the problem, but that's not the whole problem, but that is definitely, it definitely feeds into this. Yeah.
Yes. Big part of it. Well, look, are there ways we can avoid misinformation, or do we just need to get better at spotting it?
It's hard to spot misinformation, and especially disinformation. We've spent 40 hours looking at one account to see if it was a real person or not, and couldn't figure out at the end of the day. And that's research.
Wait a minute. You spent 40 hours?
40 hours. Oh yeah. I can't say the name of the person because it might be a real person, but asked other researchers. We looked at their content, their history over time. And still with all of our tools, it was hard to tell. So in some cases, it's really hard to tell when someone's trying to manipulate the conversation. I think the most important thing we can do is tap into, first of all, how information is making us feel. Because we have this idea that misinformation is going to distort, that we can use our brains to get around it, but really disinformation, it manipulates us at the sort of like this emotional, intuitive level, this gut level. And so tap into when something's making you really angry, think about, now, why does that information make me angry? And why might someone sending that information want me to be angry? And that, at the end of the day, might be, actually, we should be angry. We should be out in the streets doing something about it, and then absolutely go for it. But if you step back and you're kind of not sure, maybe just slow down a little bit. Don't share that. Wait a little bit. Wait till the conversation goes on. And just be a little bit more careful about what we share, and really more careful about who we let into our circles online, because that's actually how sort of legitimate activism has been infiltrated by disinformation campaigns and other kinds of things, where we think somebody is part of our group, we let them in, and then they end up kind of trying to distort us towards something that's not our goal. So just kind of be a little bit more careful, take responsibility. And this number one thing, if you get something wrong, it's okay to say, hey, I got this wrong. Don't delete it and hide it and take it off, because 100 people already saw it and 3 people reshared it. Go tell those people who reshared it, hey, I got this wrong. You might not want to reshare it. You might want to delete yours as well. And then tell people. So make sure that we're correcting ourselves, and then even learning how to kind of with empathy correct others, so we can just sort of collectively help clean up these information spaces.